What do you think about communism?
I think communism sells. It's such a simple idea and message. It obviously doesn't work at all, but it's something that you could so easily say to a young, naive college person or young person in general. You can say everything should be free and healthcare should be free and universal and education should be free, but people don't really understand the ramifications behind that statement. And this is nothing new. People have been trying to sell the idea of socialism and communism for years and years and years. I mean, obviously in pre-Soviet Russia, you had communism. That's where a lot of it started. You had the Mensheviks and the Bolsheviks, and the Mensheviks were kind of like your mainstream run-of-the-mill Democrat, and then you had the Bolsheviks. This was way back in like the 1800s, 1900s, and the Bolsheviks came in. They were kind of like the DSA activists of today, and they said, well, the Mensheviks and the Democrats aren't being radical enough, and they aren't promising you all the things that we're promising you. We can give you free education and universal health care and all of these great things, and then they never deliver. So that happened back in the day. It's just like a recurring ideology. History is a big fat circle, and it's happening again because it's such an easy thing to sell, but it's never worked. It didn't work in Russia or the Soviet Union or China or Venezuela. Communism never works, but it's such an easy idea to try to convince people to vote others in with. So I hope that people read, because those who know history do not repeat it. So we just have to teach kids why it doesn't work.
Beginning this school year, social studies classrooms will be required to teach how socialism can lead to communism regimes rising up into power. One Florida educator says teachers now have a clearer roadmap on an issue that the far left has given new prominence.
It's allowed our students, our teachers, to focus in on specific events, specific people. It gives them guidelines to dig deeper into history and understand communism in a way that maybe other students may not.
Florida Republican Congressman Carlos Menes joins us now. He sits on the House Homeland Security and Select China Committee. Sir, thank you very much for giving us a little of your time this Sunday afternoon. I think you're the perfect person to talk to about this issue and its importance. And I think correctly, there is great reason right now, historical context, to learn about these subjects and to ensure that our students understand history as well. Your thoughts on this change for Florida?
I think it's very good. I mean, the problem is that our students not only don't know anything about communism, they don't know anything about the free market system. They're not taught that. They're not taught the civics class that maybe I had, maybe you had, and so they need to know. And so our students right now are going into college with a blank slate, not having any historical knowledge about what communism is, the evils of communism, how many people have died under communism, all of the false promises of communism, and that communism is really a threat to democracy. And so I think it's good that we're doing that at our elementary school and high school level, so that once they go to college and then they get confronted by these far left professors spewing all this baloney, that they're able to fire back and say, excuse me, no, this is actually what happened here in Russia, Cuba, Venezuela, what's happening right now in Nicaragua, and then they don't get fed, a pile of baloney.
Yeah, we're seeing it happening right now, this new interest in it globally all across the world in a multitude of places. And we've already seen the fallout in some of those places again, the same fallout that we've seen historically. I think it's worth noting as well for our viewers, many of them may know that you are Cuban born yourself and your family had been forced to flee during the Cuban Revolution. But the way this new history, the new standards are laid out in Florida, very interesting. Grade 6 has a certain a system that they begin to learn about, and it follows into grade 7, into grade 8. For instance, the early attempts at communal living right here in American society, in Plymouth, for instance, and the early colonies and the efforts there. And then it goes on into high school, where it goes deeper into developing political, intellectual, economic, as you mentioned, origins of communism, and a very layered approach to helping the kids understand how the history has unfolded. Do you think that is a great approach to begin young and to explain all of these systems?
Yeah, it should be age appropriate. I mean, you can't get right into it until, all the evils, et cetera, and really what happens at the end and what Stalin did and how many millions of people Stalin killed in the Soviet Union. You need to start it off. But also, I also believe that you need to teach the differences between that system and then our system. The capitalist system, democracy, et cetera. the system that we have here in the United States system ever developed. It's not perfect. It certainly is not perfect. Nothing that is ever created by man is going to be perfect, but it is the best system created so far, and it's much, much better than the system that communism, and it's been proven time and time again. And so, our kids, again, I hope that our kids will be taught that, so that once they go to college, to have a base of understanding about the two different systems, and they're able to debate their college professors to a much better level, so that they don't get fed just one side of the equation, which apparently is what's been happening for the last 30, 35 years in our colleges. They're being fed one side, told about the evils of capitalism and the greatness of socialism, when in fact it's the other way around.
I'm not surprised that they're doing it where they're doing it. Free states are probably going to want to implement more educational programs like this. It does not serve. You think about a family. If your family is raising children, it is no service to the family to teach the children to hate the parents, hate the siblings, and hate themselves. Because the only thing those children will be fit to do after they have been properly taught to hate their own origin is to destroy the family and to destroy themselves. That is the only thing that you can do. So teaching people to hate America, to hate our origins, our Constitution, to misunderstand our history, to misunderstand our position in the world now and how we achieve that position and why we achieve that position is only setting people up and programming them to be used for destruction, because that is all they'll be fit for afterwards. I say, all the time that America only fails when you compare it and you judge it against perfection. But if you judge America with everything, I'm talking about from day one, if you judge America from everything it has been, good and bad, it is superior to any other system of government organization ever put together by humans, because humans are not perfect. So humans can't create a perfect system. If we can't create a perfect system, maybe we can create which is the best system, which so far history has proven that ours has been the best. However, if you are hell-bent and determined to have utopia, then nothing can be good until it is perfect. And we have got to stop programming people to make good the enemy of perfection. It is not. We need to accept who we are, which is imperfect beings, and therefore we will create imperfect situations in our lives. However, we should be striving to create the best that we can. And when we do, which the United States has, when we do, we should respect that so we can preserve it.
First of all, that first lady that was interviewed by media, it's so wonderful when media interviews somebody that got some sense. It's just so refreshing to hear them talk. She did such an excellent job explaining what communism was and what the dangers was, and how it affected countries that implemented it. But this is our response to the left's efforts to ebonically educate America. You remember that they were trying to teach them how to speak Ebonics. So this is our response to that. You go back into the schools and you start teaching the way you're supposed to be teaching. I really appreciate that. It's nice to see schools in the USA being used to counter anti-Americanism, to counter the propaganda that's been peddled to our American citizens. They should also be doing the same thing. I hope they get around to teaching the courses on the dangers of woke theology and on media deception and on the history of the Democratic Party. Oh, can you imagine? Can you just imagine? Can you imagine if they started teaching the Constitution or ethics? Oh, let me stop. Starting to fantasize now. but it's wonderful.
No, you're absolutely right, Minister Danzel. And there was a time when they did teach civics. I'm old enough to remember when civics was a mandatory course. Like,
Come on.
had to take
Come
it.
on,
And
yes.
not only did you have to take it, you had to quiz and be tested.
That's
and
right.
It was a mandatory course, part of your graduation curriculum.
That's right.
You had to pass it. They took it out, and I think I understand why they took it out. Because if you don't know your rights, if you don't know, if you don't understand your government and how it
Right.
works, it makes it easy, to propagandize the
That's
kids
right.
to, vote against their actual rights and what they can
Excellent.
and can't do. And it makes it easy for you to become an enslaved population,
There you
which is,
go.
I
There
think
you
is a
go.
lot of the reason why, they've taken, cursive out. They've
That's right.
obviously removed civics.
Come on.
Because when you think about the documents, a lot of them were written in cursive back in the day. So if you can't write cursive, meaning you also can't read cursive, which also means that they could eventually get rid of the Constitution and you would be okay with it because you can't read it anyway. That is a problem. So I
Amen.
appreciate, I
Me too.
appreciate what Ron DeSantis is doing down there in Florida.
Me
I
too.
appreciate the fact that they're deciding to, add this curriculum in. This is a whole lot better.
Be sure that the Democrats are going to try to counter this with in their school system in the cities that they control. But there are laws on the book that require all textbooks to be accurate and up to date.
Yes.
So when they start putting stuff in there that are not accurate, the public has a right to protest and demand that it's taken out. There's a law on the books that prevents schools from teaching false information, and people need to start making sure it's enforced.
Well, at the same time, Mr. Danzel, the people that will argue against teaching anti-socialism, the people that are arguing, those are the people that need to be called out.
That's
Because
right.
why are
I
you
agree.
upset
Thank you.
that the kids are actually being taught an alternative to what's actually being pushed in a lot of these, what they call bastions for, academia on these college campuses?
Yes, sir.
Because what we do know is a lot of this has, been pushed on these college campuses.
That's right.
That's why
yeah.
you send your kid to college and they come back somebody
on.
different with an
Come on.
ideology and you're like, where in the world did you learn that? I
Yes.
didn't send you there for that. They come back with this ideology.
In the scripture in Deuteronomy 4:9, it says, but watch out, be careful never to forget what you yourself have seen. Do not let these memories escape from your mind as long as you live, and be sure to pass them on to your children and your grandchildren. Growing up, as you just said, we learned about all of these things. We knew what these things were. It was mandatory in school. That is why when people started talking about socialism, communism, and all, I immediately could go back to the Berlin Wall, East Germany, West Germany. I could go back to all of that because these are the things that we, not only did we live it and see it, we learned about it, we talked about it and all these things. But you can't control society if people are smart. You need people to be dumb. And this is what they're doing. So they don't want the children to know these things, because if they want to be able to tell them, again, because they want to control language, they want to change the meaning of what these things actually are. They want to change capitalism is horrible. And these poor children are so inequipped to handle these situations. They can't even stop and say, but how did you make your money? Because it seems like you made your money in capitalism. They will say, look at Hassan Piker. Capitalism is horrible. We need to get rid of it. Sir, you are a multimillionaire because of capitalism. Yes. What are you talking about? The same people that are yelling, we stand with socialism, communism. We were talking about the other day, let's start in Hollywood. Why don't they start divvying out the money in Hollywood? There's some stars, there's some actors that aren't making as much as the multi-millionaire actors. Why don't we start divvying out the money that way? Or like how that gentleman went on college campuses and say, well, hey, since you like communism, socialism, why don't we divvy out the grades, help the grades, because those that are making D's and F's, why don't you give them your A? Well, I worked hard for it. Yeah, but you know what? Let's just share because it's only right. When you start putting it in people's faces, then they don't care for it. And that's why our kids need to be equipped. So honestly, parents, you shouldn't just wait. Shout out to Florida for doing that, first and foremost. And I think every red state should adopt this. Every red state should adopt it. They should look at what Florida is doing. Just like Florida made their own Save America Act, they need to adopt the same type of stuff in their states. But parents, it is your job. You know it. You tell your children, because again, that's what the word said. You saw these things. Don't let these memories escape. Don't let these memories pass away. Listen, if you are a Cuban, your children should never be talking anything about communism and socialism. Right. You should be able to be telling them exactly what goes on. Same thing with Venezuela. Or when you're from these countries and you know exactly what it's about, your children should never be in agreement. They should be on those college campuses fighting back, saying, no. Did you live it, professor? Because I sure did. My family sure did. And this is not the way to go. This is why we escape from those countries to get here, so that we'll be able to have the freedom that America provides. This is why America is one of the greatest nations. It is the greatest nation on this earth, because the way we handle the way we live, this is how everyone should be living, not under this made up ideology that they're pushing and making it sound pretty. It is not pretty. That is your job as parents, as grandparents, as everyone. You should be teaching your children, because at this point you can't depend on the schools, because this is what happens when you depend on the schools. Your children can't read, your children can't write cursive, your children can't do math, your children can't watch a clock and tell you what time the clock. They can't tell you anything. And these are supposed to be the future. And they can't do anything, then that should tell you what kind of future they want. The Agenda 2030, the pact for the future, that's what they want. They want the children dumb enough that they can usher all these things in and control society.
They want them dumb enough that not only will they be able to pass it, the people will clamor for it.
Mm-hmm.
That is the goal.
Mm-hmm.
They clamor for your subjugation.
Mm-hmm.
They want you to beg for it. That's the crazy thing about this. And what people don't understand, and I think the reason why this can pass in Florida is because there is a large population of people who actually experience what this looks like. They experience communism. So I think that's a lot of the reason why this can pass, because you have a couple of generations of people that could say, hey, this isn't good. We experienced this. As a matter of fact, we still have family members experiencing this. We came over here to get away from that. And I think that's why this could pass in Florida. I do think this is something that should, be incorporated pretty much across the country. The majority of, I guess, conservative states, things of that nature, I think they should look at Florida and say, hey, we need to add this into our curriculum. We need to make civics a mandatory course, not an elective anymore. I think civics still exists. Somebody asked, they don't teach civics? They still do. It's just an elective. You get to choose if you want it or not.
A famous rapper that I like, and his quote is, if the truth is told, the youth can grow. Okay, that was Nas, and I am. And when I look at this, that's where everybody is having a battle. It's with the youth. Everybody's youth, whether they're liberal, conservative, however they're growing up, it starts there. Okay, when we get into the extremes, with terrorism and all of this stuff, a lot of those children are taught this as children. So you gotta catch them young. And civics, I don't think we should wait until high school. You can teach the kids the basics, and then you can, build on it. Just like with arithmetic, you can build on it as you, go higher in your education. But they don't want that, because normally from 0 to 7, if you teach the kids, you can actually catch them, they understand, and it sticks with them. So that's why it's such a late process, because if you wait till later in the process, then you're able to go ahead and say, well, I'm just going to do this, and I'm just going to give the kids whatever I want them to learn. But you guys pointed out a couple of things. Somebody from my family's standpoint has every right to point out so many different oppressions. My native side, my black side, my Polish side, my Cuban side. Like, you have so many different groups in one, just alone in my family, where you can point out the oppression and have a victim Olympics if you wanted to. But every last one of those groups have been able to survive because they push forward. They're about family. They absolutely understand the basics. A lot of these families here today do not understand the basics. And in Washington, D.C., we didn't learn civics. We learned D.C. history. That's what we were taught. D.C. history. All right. And that's taught from the liberal perspective. So even when they teach the history, it's still not cultivated on a large scale. And then when you get into the anti-American sentiment, they've been done away with that when they took away the Pledge of Allegiance. They took that away. That was the first thing, right? Because when you have to pledge allegiance to something, this is what you're going to be loyal to. So if I have no loyalty to this country, then I'm not required to do anything, kind of like the illegal immigrants. I'm not required to actually come over here and, be loyal to this country. So they know what they're doing. They systematically do stuff. When, you know, when they like to talk about systematic stuff, they're systematically destroying it one by one. And it's very subtle because it's these little things. And when you don't notice it, you know, you start seeing the results later. They understand. They play the long game. Take PE, okay? PE used to be something that we used to do, and the girls changed out and did girl things, and you know the boys changed out and did boy things. But here's the problem with that: a lot of boys are a lot more round. A lot of boys are not very stoic. They're very quiet, and it's because they haven't had that camaraderie. Some children don't get to go, you know, outside all the time, and so school might be their only interaction with other people their age and their peers. And so when you look at all of that, they have systematically destroyed children. And by the time that they are adults, they're already set forth to not like this country. They don't know finances. They don't know the civics. They don't know how to write, right? Because Sanskrit, one of the first languages, which now we use as cursive, right? That they have no motor skills. They don't have anything that would set the foundation for not even just a person trying to make it, but an American person. So I say all that to say there's tons of things that, you know, needs to be pretty much corrected in the school system, but I think this is a good start. It's a very good start, but there's absolutely more that needs to be done.
I want to hear from you guys in the comment section. What are your thoughts? Hit the like button, share the video, subscribe to the channel, turn the notifications on to all so you never miss an upload. Consider joining the ARP family or buy your brother a coffee. That link's in the description box below. And as always, keep God first, stay prayed up. We'll catch up with you guys next time. Peace.
It is God who arms me with strength. Yeah, I'm battle ready. He trains my hands for battle. My heart stays steady. But thanks be to God, he gives us the victory. Through my Lord Jesus Christ, fear can't live in me. I was down to the dirt, red clay on my shoes, old pain in my shirt, oh so bruised. And the Lord hit my chest, kicked air from my breath, put power in my step.